In this lecture, I will implement the 7-step workflow that you have learned in the last lecture. So now let's start the lecture. So this is a general walkthrough video in which I will show you that how we can implement those 7 steps in COMSOL multiphysics. So don't overwhelmed, you will learn everything from scratch from the next phase. So this is just a walkthrough to give you an idea that how we can implement those 7 steps that you just learned. So let's start the lecture. So the first thing when you open a COMSOL multiphysics software is this window. So you have two options, model wizard and blank model, which we already discussed in our previous lectures. So I will go with the blank model and select everything from scratch. So I will click on blank model. So now you can see here we are now in the main window of COMSOL multiphysics, where we have model builder and we have different ribbons, settings for each option, and then graphic window. So for now I have selected a very simple model of fluid flow, laminar flow in a pipe. So let's start with the 7-step workflow. So the first step in the workflow is the geometry creation. So we want to create the geometry. So to create the geometry, go to the home tab and select the add component. And once you click on add component, you have different options for space dimension. For now, we want to solve a 2D problem, so I will select 2D. So once I click on 2D, you can see here a 2D component has been added under the model builder. So now the first step is the geometry creation. So for geometry creation, if you go to the geometry section, you will find different options. We will discuss these options in the upcoming phases. So you can change the length unit and the angular unit from here. So I will create a very simple two-dimensional pipe. For that, I will go to the geometry section, select a rectangle. So now rectangle has been added. If I increase the width to 10 meter and keep the height 1, if I click on build selected, so you can see here I have created a rectangle of 10 meter width and 1 meter height. If I uncheck the sketch, you can see the rectangle. So now we are done with our first step, which was geometry creation. The next step is the material assignment. So for material assignment, if you come to this material option and then you go to the material option and click on add material, so you will see this add material option will appear. I will go to the built-in option and select the water material I want to use for this model. So once I click on water, you can see the water has been added under the material section. I will close this one. So now we are done with the material assignment. The next step is the selection of appropriate physics. To select the appropriate physics, I will go to the physics tab and select add physics. And under this add physics, I will go to fluid flow, single phase flow, and double click on laminar flow. So once I double click on laminar flow, so you can see here laminar physics flow has been added under the model builder. I will close this one. So now we are done with the step number 3. Step number 4 is applying boundary conditions and initial conditions. In this case, the initial conditions can be assigned from here. So you can see here at start, the velocity and pressure, I want to keep them 0. For the boundary conditions, I will go to the laminar flow and go to the boundaries and select the inlet boundary. Again, select on boundaries and select the outlet boundary. And I will come back to this inlet boundary and select this boundary as my inlet boundary. So the fluid will enter from here. And the velocity I want to provide is 5 meter per second. For the outlet boundary, I will select the outlet boundary and select the boundary which is outlet for our pipe. For example, this one is our outlet boundary, and I want to provide the outlet boundary condition which is a pressure condition and static pressure, and I want to keep it 0. So now we are done with the step number 4, which is applying initial and boundary conditions. So step number 5 is the meshing the domain. So to create the mesh, you can click on this add mesh and you can go to this mesh option and select this build mesh. And you can see if I click on build mesh, a mesh has been created based on the physics. So we have physics controlled mesh and user controlled mesh. We will discuss this in detail in upcoming phases of this course. So after that, we have option to create coarse mesh or fine mesh. You will learn about the coarse and fine mesh in the meshing section of this course. So if I click on coarser mesh and select build all, you can see here a coarser mesh has been created. For now, I will keep it normal. So now we are done with the 5th step in the workflow, which is meshing. The 6th step in the workflow is the selection of study and solver configuration. For that, you need to go to this study step and select add study, and you can see this add study window is appeared. Under this, I will select this stationary study, double click on this, and you can see a study step has been added with the name of step 1 stationary study. I will close this one After that, you can see the solver configuration by just clicking on show default solver. Then it will take some time, and you can see the solver configuration has been added, under which if I go to the solution one and open this stationary solver, I can see different options. For example, fully coupled flow. For each type of flow, I can see different options, which we will go in detail in the phase 4 of this course. So once you are done with your study type and solver configuration, then we need to solve this model. To solve this model, you just need to select this compute, or under this study ribbon you will find this option of compute. If I click on this compute, it will take some time and the model will be solved. You can track the progress from this progress bar. So now our simulation is completed. The last and the seventh step in the workflow is the post processing. So you can perform the post processing in COMSOL under the results section. If I go to the results section, so these are the two default plots that were built by COMSOL. So the first one is velocity plot, the second one is pressure plot. So we can play with this, and I will teach you in detail about how to plot the graphs in COMSOL Multiphysics in phase 5 of this course. So this was a general overview of applying those 7 steps in COMSOL Multiphysics. So now you have learned how to use those 7 steps and apply in COMSOL Multiphysics software. In the next phase of this course, we will start everything from scratch, from geometry to material assignment to selection of appropriate physics, and then we will move on to applying boundary conditions and then meshing, and finally you will learn about the steady solver configuration and post processing.